People often ask me what gear I use when we make our short films, and I've been a little hesitant about making a video on it for a couple of reasons. The big one is that I don't want anyone to think that they can't make a movie unless they have any particular gear. I always try to convey that you should use what you have and not worry too much about what others have. It's very easy to make excuses like, well, I can't make a movie because I don't have that particular camera yet. Another thing is that the gear I use might not be the best option out there. It's just what I happen to use at the moment. For example, I've talked about my Sokani lights in the last couple of videos, but what I was originally going to buy were the Aperture MC lights that I'd read about. They happen to be out of stock everywhere, so I bought Sokani lights instead. I'm very happy with them, but are they the best option out there? I don't know. This is more for people who are curious about what I use rather than a buying guide. The things I do use are relatively inexpensive, but even so, everyone has a different budget, so I'll do my best to mention options that are even cheaper than what I have. I mentioned this in a Film Riot video, but when you compare cheap gear and expensive professional gear, the biggest differences are not always in the final results. It's more often a difference in durability and ease of use. This LED light put inside a cheap paper lantern can give you really nice light, but it's not going to last very long, and you'll have to MacGyver together ways of rigging it. Professional gear is easy to use and will last a very long time. But if you're willing to put up with the extra time and frustration and maybe having to replace things more often, then it can be possible to get what you need out of cheaper gear. I should also say that I've not been sponsored by any brands or anything like that. These are just my own opinions on stuff that I own. Alright, let's get started. For the shorts, we don't really write scripts, but when I do write scripts, I use Fade In. The screenplay software you'll hear the most about is Final Draft, but Fade In can open and save in Final Draft format too. I think it's great. When you make things on your own though, you don't have to care about screenplay formatting or anything like that. Write it in Notepad or on a piece of cardboard if you feel like it. Nobody has to see your script if it's just a roadmap for you. For storyboarding, I haven't found the perfect solution yet. I have occasionally used Toon Boom Storyboard Pro, but I hate its drawing tools and I hate subscription software. Currently, I draw storyboard panels in Clip Studio Paint or Krita. The latter is free. To organize them, I name each file in tens, so the first image is 10, the second is 20, and so on. This is in case I need to add panels in between other panels, then I still have some numbers in between. To then put them all together into pages in a PDF, I use something called ImageMagick. ImageMagick is a command line image editing software. I've written a batch file that takes all the images in a folder and makes a PDF the way I want it. It's written very specifically for my workflow and not very flexible, so it's not something I'm going to share. Of course, there's also the option of just drawing storyboards on paper. My current camera of choice is the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Camera 4K. If you've been following this channel, you'll know I've used Blackmagic cameras for the past 7 years or so. I think Blackmagic are great. You get so much quality for the money with all their gear and software. I praise them a lot. They're not perfect though. Sometimes they can be a little quick to forget and move on from their cameras. I bought the Ursa Mini 4.6K, but shortly after they came out with the Ursa Mini Pro, and then the camera I have didn't get any more updates. Since the Pocket has been getting a lot of updates, I now find myself using that one a lot more, and the most expensive camera I've ever bought doesn't get as much use, which is a shame. At the same time, the camera I bought had all the features advertised. It just would have been nicer to get some more updates out of it. I mention this mostly so I have something negative to say about them and not seem like a total shill. I also have a Panasonic GH5. While I don't use it to shoot shorts, I use it for everything else. Behind the scenes, location scouting for movies, still photography, and whatever else. If I could only have one camera, it would be this or some other stills camera since you get so much out of it. But I do love the image quality and certain features I get with my Blackmagic cameras, and I'm glad I don't have to choose. If I didn't have any camera, I'd shoot on my phone. There's an app called Filmmaking Pro that enables you to manually change settings like exposure, white balance, focus, frame rate, and so on. It turns your phone into a camera that's 1,000,000 times better than the cameras I grew up making shorts on. And I mean, look at movies that were shot on DV tape, like 28 Days Later. That's a movie that was released in theaters and was shot on standard def DV tapes. Today's smartphones are super high-end cinema cameras in comparison and are totally capable of shooting feature films. Use whatever you can get your hands on. My go-to lens is the Sigma 18-35 f1.8. I use it with a speed booster, which actually makes it like an f1.2 and makes it wider. On the pocket camera, it actually makes the lens a little too wide. When you're zoomed out all the way, you do get some vignetting, which you have to be careful with. There are cheaper lenses that can do a really great job too. One thing I've done in the past is buy vintage lenses at flea markets, which can be interesting. The thing with lenses though are that they can last you a long time. You might upgrade your camera, but you can keep your lenses. If you're not shooting everything at night or with controlled light, neutral density filters are really good to have. Some cameras have them built in though. I've tried using variable ND filters, but the ones I've tried just haven't been as good as just regular old NDs like these from Tiffin. I use the screw-on kind, so it's a bit of a hassle when you need to change. You can buy ones that slide into a matte box, but they're more expensive and you can't use them without a matte box. So I stick to screw-on filters. I bought this Tilta matte box pretty recently. It's a clamp-on one, which means you can also use it without any rigging. It works for my purposes and it supports screw-on filters as well as the slide-in ones. Do you need a matte box? Not really. If you have screw-on filters, the only thing it really does is keep lens flares out, and a piece of taped-on cardboard can do that. This is the follow focus I use. It works fine. You can of course just focus with the lens, but it's very handy to be able to mark focus points. The lens gear is 3D printed, which is why it's this color. I happened to find a 3D model online that was custom made for this lens. Tripods is an area where spending a little bit more money can make quite a difference. Until recently, I had a tripod that was alright, but a long time ago I used a borrowed Manfrotto tripod that I loved. So recently, I bought my own. I have the 546GB tripod with the 502A head. It's really nice. The tripod can get really low, the head is super smooth with various settings. Cheaper tripods are still usable though. They might just not be a total joy to use. There are little tricks you can do to try to improve things on cheaper tripods. One trick to get smoother pans is to use a rubber band. But just like with lenses, tripods can last you a long time. You can use it with any camera, so if you can make the investment, it can be worth it. For Dolly shots, I use my shitty Dolly. I have a video on how to make one yourself. It's not great, but it's dirt cheap. For even cheaper alternatives, you can throw down a blanket or some cardboard or anything with little friction and just drag the camera around. Or go handheld, even cheaper. Currently, I use a Tascam DR70D to record sound on. It's alright. It has 4 channels. It has features like recording a separate track with a lower volume, so you're not screwed if something was too loud and clipped. You have a backup. I also have this little Zoom H1 that I can bring with me and record sounds on the go. It has built-in microphones, but you can also hook up an external microphone to it. For recording sounds for our shorts, I have a Rode NTG2. There's also the Rode NTG1 if you don't need a battery for the microphone. For recording voices and stuff like what you're hearing now, I have a Shure SM7B. I've recorded voices on the Rode mic as well though, which works great. If I didn't have the Shure, I'd use the Rode. If I didn't have the Rode, I'd record straight into the Zoom. And if I didn't have that, I'd record straight into camera like I used to do when I was younger. On my camera, I have a Rode VideoMic Pro. If I could only buy one mic, I'd buy that one since it can record on the camera as well as hook it up to other recorders. And the sound is quite nice. The lights that I currently use are these two Drakecast, I guess, LED lights. These Sokani X21 Pro lights, and then various bulbs and house lights. I have 2 of these umbrella type softboxes that you can find on Amazon or eBay. I have my IKEA paper lantern and a bucket light made from an IKEA trash can. I have a video on making one of those too. As long as you have some kind of light that gives off a nice looking light and doesn't flicker, then it's more about shaping the light, making it soft in various ways, blocking it from where you don't want it, and so on. This is where you can get really creative and use all kinds of things from around the house. You can bounce light off a piece of cardboard through a cheap shower curtain. That's a pretty soft light. One of the big advantages for me with buying lights that are made for movie making has been battery power. It's so nice to not have to worry about outlets and hiding cords. With batteries, you put the light where you want it, and going outside is no problem. But if you can live with cords, you can go really cheap. For editing and color these days, I use Blackmagic Resolve. There's a free version of it that has almost the same features as the paid version. Can't get cheaper than free. And even the paid version is very affordable for what you get. This is the software that has color graded a lot of major Hollywood movies. The editing feature is a newer addition, but I really like it so far. Resolve also has visual effects compositing and audio editing and mixing built in. For more advanced compositing and audio, I prefer to do it in separate applications, which I will talk about shortly. But it is totally possible to do most of your post-production in this one piece of software. For any 3D, 2.5D, or sometimes even 2D work, I use Blender. I've talked about this a lot in my making of videos. It's a fantastic piece of software that's free and open source. You can use it for a lot of post-production things like editing and node-based compositing, but some of those things are more cumbersome to do in Blender than more specialized software. But it is free. Whenever I do 2D animation, I use Moho. It's great for doing vector-based puppet animation. You basically rig characters with a skeleton and animate that rather than the traditional frame-by-frame way. In some ways, it's more like 3D animation than 2D animation. There are free alternatives with similar workflows like Synfig, but I don't have any experience with that. You could also do something very similar in Blender. For 2D art and retouching, I use either Photoshop or Krita. Krita is free and it's awesome. Some things it doesn't do as well as Photoshop, but other things it does better. Especially if it's digital painting you're doing, I'd say Krita is better in a lot of ways. I hate subscription software, but I'm just too used to Photoshop to give it up. It's become too much of a standard. If I couldn't afford Photoshop though, I'd use Krita for everything. There are other alternatives like Affinity Photo or the free GIMP, but I haven't really gotten into those. For compositing, I use either After Effects or Blackmagic Fusion. Fusion is great. There's a free version of it, and Resolve even has a version of it built in. I like having things separate though, so I prefer the standalone version most of the time. But if it's minor visual effects and comps, it's really nice to be able to do it right inside Resolve. Fusion is node-based, which makes it very powerful, but it takes some learning. And some things are just faster and more intuitive to throw together in After Effects. For example, if you want 3 images on top of each other. In Fusion, you'll have to make a couple of merge nodes. In After Effects, you just put 3 layers on top of each other. But for more advanced compositing and doing iterations and things, Fusion can be more powerful. And some things can be faster in Fusion. For example, you can just copy and paste node setups between different compositions, which comes in handy if you're doing several similar setups. That can get a little trickier in After Effects when you have many layers and pre-comps. If I couldn't afford After Effects, I could still get it all done in Fusion. For music and sometimes sound design, I use Reason. You can program and tweak various synths and samplers, and I love it. This is one area where I don't really know of any free alternatives. I'm sure they're out there, I just haven't used them. For all other sound needs, I use Reaper. Very affordable and really great audio software. If you can't afford Reason, you can also make music in Reaper. You'll need to find and install some VST instruments though. You can find quite a lot of free VST synths and plugins online. There are completely free audio editing software out there, like Audacity. I haven't used it a lot though and don't know if they have all the things I need. That might be worth checking out though if you're on a tight budget. Resolve now also has audio editing and mixing with Fairlight. It's very capable, but for me it's a bit more limited than Reaper at the moment. For example, if I add an equalizer to a clip in Reaper, I can add as many bands as I want. In Fairlight, I can add 4. But if you're doing things that aren't too complicated, check out Fairlight inside Resolve. It does have a lot of professional features, and you can do things like mix in surround sound if you want to. For encoding and converting video files, I use the free FFmpeg. This is command line software which can scare people off. You can find various graphical user interfaces online, which makes it less scary, but I just use batch files that I've written. FFmpeg can basically encode and convert anything. You can encode ProRes on Windows, for example, which few other programs do. Whenever I upload videos online, I use it to encode them to H.264 format. When it comes to a computer to do this all on, just buy the best that your budget allows. The fully CG end credits I did for Annabelle Creation, I rendered on a laptop. If I rendered it on the computer I have now, it would look exactly the same, it would just render out faster. Yeah, not every computer can edit 4K, but you don't have to edit 4K. I have these Yamaha HS8 monitors or speakers, but when we made the short closet space, I didn't have any speakers. I mixed it all on headphones. Not ideal since things can sound very different on speakers, but if that's all you have. So yeah, that is what I currently use to make short films with for anyone curious. It works for me, but again, use whatever you have access to. If you make something engaging enough, nobody's going to be thinking about what camera you used.